Yesterday we talked about fragrance flops. Today we're going to be doing the opposite. We're going to be talking about 10 fragrances that gained near universal acclaim. Some of the highest rated and some of the most well-loved fragrances in the entire industry. Let's start with number 10. Number 10, Paco Rabbane, 1 million. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why is 1 million so low on this list? Well, the truth is, 1 million was originally laughed at by many critics as being stupid, juvenile, decadent at best, and having a bottle that looked more like a prop from the board game Monopoly than an actual fragrance bottle. Then after a year and a half, when 1 million had become the biggest selling fragrance of the mid-noughties and was keeping the industry alive, all of those industry critics had to quietly take their opinions and give them a lethal injection. And then they were all like, "Ha, told you so, told you it was going to be a hit." 1 million, now being over 10 years old, has given it an almost nostalgic warmth of the beginning of the modern era of over-the-top sweet fragrances. We've now got people saying that 1 million is a masterpiece, it's a classic, and in some ways, in many ways, it is. But when it was first released, let's not forget that that's not what a lot of people thought. At least the critics didn't think that. As for the mass population, they always loved it and still do. Number 8, Christian Dior, Fahrenheit. In 1988, two of the biggest fragrances in our industry were released. One tried to smell like the ocean and the majestic green pastures of woods and nature. The other one tried to smell like your dad's motorbike on its last legs, leaking petrol. Incredibly, both were mega hits, but the highest praised of the two? Fahrenheit. It was a huge hit that smelt purely of masculinity. Its violet leaf with petrol accord gave it a brazen edge that other fragrances had attempted to do, but the brilliance of relative newcomer Michael Almerac and veteran Jean-Louis Cisiac created something that wasn't just blunt and aggressive, it was also extremely focused and measured. Michael Almerac would also go on to release many acclaimed designer fragrances like Bentley for Men Absolute, Escada Magnetism, Gucci Pour Homme One, and many more. Number 8, Chanel Allure Homme Sport. Here was everybody's face when Allure Homme Sport came out. Yay! Here was highly influential perfume critic Luca Turin's face. Allure Homme Sport is one of the most interesting designer fragrances because from the years of 2004 to about 2010, Allure Homme Sport was about as hyped in the designer fragrance world as the Beatles were in the real world in the early 60s. Then suddenly 2010 happened, and like a weird light switch, people not only stopped being interested, but it was like the Men in Black were called to wipe everybody's memory of it ever being popular. Then Allure Homme Sport Eau Extreme comes along, and now everybody acts as though Bleu de Chanel EDT and Allure Homme Sport Eau Extreme were the only men's fragrances Chanel ever released. But I refuse to forget. Allure Homme Sport is a fantastic, phenomenal fragrance, one of my most favourite designer fragrances of all time. And if you don't agree and think it's a rubbish synthetic mess, then you can join Luca Turin on the naughty step. Number 7, Dior Homme Intense. I'm personally a fan of the original, but that chocolate, iris and lavender combination was almost as sexy to everyone as Becky Lynch simply existing is to me. It's a daring lipstick makeup bag with chocolate on top, which admittedly on paper sounds like a really dodgy date gone wrong at the Cadbury's factory or something. It was just so captivating and sexually alluring that the stores and internet both creamed themselves over it, declaring it at one point to be the sexiest men's fragrance on earth. Unfortunately, its popularity has declined, and Christian Dior, in the ultimate heel turn, bigger than Hulk Hogan, revealed to be the third man at Bash at the Beach 1996 to join the NWO, Christian Dior decided to reformulate and ultimately destroy the entire Dior Homme line. Number 6, Bleu de Chanel. Do you hate blue fragrances? Well, you're going to have to point the finger at Jacques Polch. Christian Dior in the 80s and the 90s to a degree were the trendsetters, but in the new millennium, Chanel decided they wanted to change the game. Incorporating the best elements of a marine style fragrance with also citrus and incense, they created Bleu de Chanel. The combination was a huge hit, and it sent shockwaves through the fragrance industry. Shockwaves that we're still feeling today. People loved it. Even Luca Turin had nice words to say about it, and it is arguably, apart from Chanel No. 5, the most enduring fragrance that Chanel has ever made. Number 5. Yves Saint Laurent, Nuit. Before my good friend Jezza Fragrance, chairlifter and one-handed push-up German extraordinaire exclaimed, "With great power comes a 200ml bottle of Nuit." Pretty certainly said that. People were pretty impressed with Yves Saint Laurent with their L'Homme fragrance. Everybody applauded them with a modest happiness of applauding a dog at a dog show making a solid effort. But when Nuit came along, people were applauding as though YSL had invented sliced bread. Sexy, chocolatey, sophisticated sliced bread with cardamom flavoured butter that you could just spread on. It was a hit, and despite some reformulation, still continues to do extremely well, although somewhat diluted by its approximately 3.4 billion flankers. Number 4. Dolce Gabbana's The One. Olivier Polge is quite simply one of the greatest perfumiers alive today. He composed the original Dior Homme. He's the current in-house perfumier for Chanel, perfuming my favourite version of Bleu de Chanel, the Parfum edition. He's such a boss that he made Flower Bomb, then Jimmy Choo came, and with more audacity than the audio plugin said, "Hey babe, I liked that Flower Bomb, could you do the exact same fragrance for us? We'll even have the similar packaging." Olivier Polge, with zero fear, replied very simply, "Oui." And the two absolute mad lads laughed and laughed and laughed, and then Olivier Polge was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for making the exact same fragrance. In fact, I cannot stress this enough. Just this guy made Flower Bomb. Jimmy Choo said, "We're making a rip-off of Flower Bomb and we want to pay you to make the exact same fragrance." And Olivier Polge was like, "Sure mate, because you bloody would, wouldn't you?" He then went back to Victor and Rolf, made nearly 20 other flankers. They could have stopped him and said, "Mate, you totally ripped us off." But no, they invited him back, and then Jimmy Choo invited him back to continue to rip off Flower Bomb flankers by making Jimmy Choo flankers. I mean, that's like a bloke cheating on a woman, and both women being like, "Yeah mate, good for you. You can use either of our houses at any time, with any of our assets or money, you can even drive our cars, whatever you need, well done," and applauding the bloke every time he cheats on them. This guy is living a life none of us will ever know. He also made Dolce Gabbana The One, which is fun and spicy and very nice and very pleasant. Doesn't last though, but we forgive him anyway, because he's Olivier Polge, and he's pretty much a king. Number 3, Giorgio Armani, Acqua di Gio. In 1994, Giorgio Armani contacted a gentleman who had done some fragrances for Cartier that were pretty bloody okay actually. They had been decent hits for the brand of Cartier, and they said, "Mate, could you do us some marine, mate?" That gentleman was Alberto Morealis, and he made one of the most successful fragrances, and still to this day, the most successful aquatic marine fragrance, by far. With an appeal for the younger chaps, whilst also a nice aromatic depth for the old gentleman, it was a supernova of accessibility. Anybody could wear it, and it smelt good. This fragrance kicked off Alberto's career, which still continues today, and is still extremely successful. Number 2, Creed, Aventus. Aventus is more like an empire than a fragrance. At one point, this was the fragrance industry. Nothing could touch it. Cults were built, shrines were curated. It is financially the second most successful fragrance release ever of all time. The smoke, the fruit, the citrus. It was the ultimate expression of masculinity in fragrance, and the peak of Creed's history. Only took them 250 years to get there, mind. Moral of the story? Just be patient, you know? Your time might come, in a century or two. Just gotta wait. And number 1, did you guess it? Did you not guess it? I wonder. Jean-Paul Gaultier's Le Male. Imagine you're 26 years old. You've been studying for your craft for a little bit, and you've gone to a good school. You've done well in your exams. Then suddenly, one of the biggest businesses in your craft comes along and says, "You're kind of promising. Let's take a chance." They give you what you deem to be a reasonably simple brief. You do some tests, create something. The employer looks at it and says, "Yeah, job done." You smile, they smile, and you both hug, quite awkwardly, but quite politely. Next thing you know, the thing that you've created is the most successful thing to have ever been created in your line of work. Nice job, mate. But honestly, how would you feel? Well, this is what happened to a very young, still studying in fragrance school, yes, that is actually a thing, Francis Kurkdjian. His work looked promising, he had a good attitude and was committed to the craft. Jean-Paul Gaultier went, yeah, okay, let's do it. The brief was simple: keep it clean. La Malle went on to be the biggest, most successful financially, critically and overall commercially fragrance to have ever, and I mean ever, hit the market. It turned men's fragrances from a stinky, smelly, almost misogynistically motivated ambition into a worldwide phenomenon. It was trendy, fun, and reinvigorated the industry. If it wasn't for La Malle, then the fragrance industry simply would not be what it is today. It wouldn't have had the success, it might not have even created such an allure and love. Who knows, if this fragrance wasn't released, I or many of my fellow fragrance reviewers might not even have YouTube channels. Something bizarre to ponder. So there you have it, those were the top 10 most critically acclaimed, universally loved fragrances to have ever been released. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing. I'm the Fragrance Press. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.